My name's Davida Shensky, and the title of my podcast is Live Without Limits, Reach Personal Success on a Daily Basis. And the purpose of this program is to help you to live the best quality of life no matter who you are and what your background is, and to teach you the skills that you need in order to become the person that you're supposed to be. And today's presentation is what is bipolar disorder? Common symptoms, different types, and when to ask for help. As someone with a mental health background and growing up with a disability, I can tell you that bipolar disorder is a hidden disability and often misunderstood, and only recently, since the pandemic, have society actually talked about mental health and the mental health issues. Just like with many psychological conditions, bipolar disorder is also largely misunderstood. This makes it difficult for people who seek help for the for this condition. That is why awareness is very important and the first step in mental health improvement. Bipolar often overlaps with several other mental health conditions, which makes it an even more complex issue to understand. And this presentation unpacks the basics of the condition and will give you the basic knowledge which will help you to build on further with more reading of this issue and listening to podcasts from people who actually have bipolar disorder. In fact, it, there is a podcast called State of Mind where it's often discussed on different mental health issues. An overview of bipolar disorder. Bipolar disorder is the new term for a condition that was previously known as manic depression. It is primarily characterized by extreme mood swings that include emotional highs, which is mania and hypomania, and lows, depression. In the manic period, one feels overly happy and energized. The confidence that one experiences in the phrase might come along with impulsive and reckless decision making. In the manic phase, some people also experience hallucinations and delusions. Hypomania is characterized by milder symptoms or mania. In this phase, this one's high symptoms do necessarily get in the way of their day-to-day life. Both manic and hypomanic episodes include three or more of these symptoms: distractibility, racing thoughts, abnormally upbeat, jumpy, or weird, poor decision making, such as going on unnecessary buying sprees, risky sexual behavior, or making poor investments, unusual talkativeness, increased activity, energy, or agitation, an exaggerated sense of well being and self confidence or euphoria, decreased need for sleep. In the depression phase, they feel hopeless and sad. One experiences symptoms that are similar to those experienced when someone has a major depressive disorder or clinical depression, these symptoms are severe and noticeable. They typically make it challenging for one to get through the day to day activities according to the DSM 5, which comes out of the NIMH book. A depressive episode consists of five or more symptoms: fatigue or loss of energy, insomnia or sleeping too much, restlessness or slow behavior, depressed mood, feeling sad, empty, hopeless, or tearful. In children and teens, this might appear as irritability. The thing is, before I go on, that in so many ways, manic depression or bipolar disorder was never talked about and hidden about. And for many years, whenever anyone would show signs of mental illness, they would often be hospitalized and left there and tied up in the hospital and not given any treatment. And now, with the medications, as long as you stay on your medication and it regulates the chemicals in the brain, there is balance because it really breaks down to the fact that with an unbalanced chemical balance in the brain, it often triggers certain types of mental illness or disability. Decreased ability to concentrate or think or indecisiveness. This is all going back to the depressed state. Low interest of feeling and no pleasure in at all or almost all activities. Significant weight loss when not dieting, weight gain, or fluctuations in appetite. In children, failure to gain weight when expected can be a sign of depression. Suicidal ideation, feelings of worthlessness, or excessive or inappropriate guilt. Between the phases, one will likely feel normal. Types of bipolar disorder. Bipolar 1 disorder. People with this type have experienced at least one manic episode. The episodes should have lasted for at least 7 days, or they must have been so severe that one had to be hospitalized. In some cases, mania might trigger psychosis, otherwise known as a break from reality, while depressive episodes are common and are typically extreme, that they last at least 2 weeks if they are not necessarily in the diagnosis. Bipolar 2 disorder. Here's one of the experiences that both hypomanic and depressive episodes. To be diagnosed with bipolar 2, you shouldn't have ever experienced a manic episode. While not as extreme as bipolar 1, it is not simply a milder form of bipolar, but an entirely different disorder. Psychothermic disorder. This is also known as cyclothermia. It consists of periods of manic and depressive behavior. These periods must have lasted for at least 2 years in adults, 1 year in children and teens. The symptoms are less severe in comparison to bipolar 1 and 2, but they require professional interventions as they can intervene and interfere with one's daily life and have the potential to develop into bipolar 1 or bipolar 2, other specified bipolar and related disorders. This diagnosis is given to those who have symptoms of bipolar disorder, such as manic and depressive episodes, but do not fit into the other bipolar categories. This might be because the symptoms are not as intense or as specified to meet the criteria, and they haven't lasted for the minimum period required for one to get a particular diagnosis. Unspecified bipolar and related disorders. This diagnosis is given when the healthcare professional doesn't have enough information to make a specific diagnosis. When to see a professional for bipolar disorder. Due to the lack of awareness, most people with bipolar disorder do not realize that they are experiencing something that requires medical attention. They fail to realize how the episodes are disrupting their lives and interactions with those around them. If you notice any of the above symptoms, it is best to ignore it is best not to ignore them and hope that they die away. That usually doesn't happen. Rather, the symptoms continue getting worse. To effectively notice and keep track of the behavior changes, consider journaling. Talk about the symptoms with your doctor or a mental health professional. They will be able to determine the most effective intervention that will allow you to continue living your best life and keep the symptoms under control. Discussing and concerning patterns with a professional is something that we should never be embarrassed about. It was important to talk about this topic because often we don't realize that mental illness is a real condition. And when you have uh, some form of mental illness, it is important to get the help because once you get the help, once you learn to recognize why you're feeling this way or why you have these mood swings, or even if you have other types of symptoms in other areas, because mental illness is not just bipolar, it's often other types of mental illness as well. And it can also be the way you were raised or what happened to you that causes depression. The thing is, once you get the treatment, once you get on the medication and understand the importance of staying on that medication, then you can live as productive a life as anyone else.